right, welcome back. You're watching TV47 Breakfast Show, and it is the 16th day of March, the year 2020, a time in history when, well, not in history actually, but it's a present time that's going to go down in history as a time when globally there is desperation and the smell and stink of disease all over. And this disease is here with us in the country, and it has dominated the news and the dailies, as we're going to see in a short while. Emmanuel Terer, I know you were on the other side with the People's Daily. What exactly is on the People's Daily this morning?
Ukurasa wa kwanza bila shaka inazungumzia.
All right, Terer, I'm told that they are yet to give us a proper shot so that we can see you, so hold on fast. But if you're watching us right now at home, you do have the opportunity to talk about this at large, and from where you are, how exactly are you taking care of yourself to ensure that you keep coronavirus at bay? We have been urged by the Ministry of Education and all the institutions that are responsible for keeping this disease at bay that we should wash our hands as frequently as possible. We should disinfect doorknobs and door frames and every area that comes in contact with the hands, because it is clear that the disease or the virus itself settles on the hands for quite a long time, and it is transferred from one hand to the other. And the moment you touch your nose, so you touch the openings on your face, then you come in direct contact with it. Emmanuel Terer,
yes.
Are you ready?
Corazon.
All right.
It's really sad. Schools now shut in corona lockdown kwa sababu ya kuogopa uwepo ama kusambaa kwa kasi kwa corona. Na umesema vizuri sana, kuna mpapatiko katika taifa la Kenya, desperation, watu wako desperate kuhusiana na hii. Lakini ni shughuli nzima ambayo naona serikali inajipatia nafasi ya kuhakikisha kwamba corona inakandamizwa pakubwa. Katika ukurasa unaofuata, ukurasa wa 4 hadi 5, schools shut, travel restricted in measures to tame COVID-19. Serikali kupitia Wizara ya Elimu ndo imeamua kwamba shule zifungwe, lakini sasa kusafiri ndo ipewe mikakati mikubwa, kwa sababu najua watu wengi wanaondoka wanakwenda nyumbani. Lakini vile vile jana katika shughuli yenyewe, churches take precautions to prevent spread. Katika shughuli nzima ya jana, watu wakikwenda katika kanisa ulipata wengi wakinawa mikono kwa sababu ya kutaka kukwepa sana uwepo wa corona. Katika gazeti hilo kurasa 6 hadi 7, state shuts down schools to avert spread of killer virus. Ni katika ukurasa huo nazungumzia vile vile masuala ya wanafunzi shule kufungwa. Maraga puts off civil cases hearing. Ni katika shughuli nzima hii, mpenzi mtazamaji, serikali inahakikisha kwamba tunakwenda nyumbani katika mahakama. Vile vile Maraga amesema kwamba wiki 2 ya kutokuwepo kusikizwa kwa kesi yoyote, ili tuone jinsi serikali inahakikisha kwamba coronavirus inakabiliwa pakubwa. World takes drastic measures to slow down COVID-19 spread. That is kurasa 8 na 9. Vile vile counties step up measures to fight emerging pandemic. Ukitaka kujisomea pakubwa vile vile katika gazeti hiyo. PSC to embrace competence in staff promotion. Na mimi hiyo ni kuhusiana na masuala ya serikali na jinsi ya kuajiri watu. Tume ya uajiri wa umma bila shaka ndo inashughulikia pakubwa. Na mimi kabla niondoke hapo, hii ilifanyika kwamba Gideon host grassroots leaders from Mount Kenya. Ni katika ukurasa huu kutaka kujisomea siasa vile vile. Ni maneno mengi ambayo utajipatia Corazon, na mimi kwamba ndivyo hivyo hali ilivyo, kuonyesha kwamba shughuli nzima hii dunia inajaribu iwezalo kukabili janga hili la corona. Mpenzi mtazamaji, taifa la Kenya lipo katika hatari. Maswali mengi yanajitokeza, Wakenya wanataka kuuliza kuhusiana na jinsi ya kufuatilia. Usikose kutazama vile vile runinga mbalimbali ikikupatia maelezo makubwa kuhusiana na swala hili la corona. Kuna kunawa mikono na vile vile mpenzi mtazamaji, kwamba ukinawa mikono ukitoka nyumbani, fanya shughuli zako, baadaye ukishaondoka kurudi kazini, fanya kazi kidogo, lazima unawe, kisha baadaye ukirudi nyumbani vile vile. Na ukihisi chochote ambacho unafikiria wewe mwenyewe kwamba huenda ndo dalili ya kuwepo kwa kirusi hiki, mpenzi mtazamaji, moja kwa moja elekea katika kituo cha matibabu ili upate kuhakikiwa na madaktari na uhakikishe kwamba unapata nafasi bomba ya kutibiwa haraka. Lakini shughuli nzima, kumbuka kwamba serikali inafanya shughuli yote hiyo. Ungeona jana Rais Uhuru Kenyatta aliwasili, kama nambari ya usajili wa magari yao yalionekana kugeuzwa, na hii inamaanisha kwamba tayari kuna tahadhari inafaa kuwepo katika taifa la Kenya. Corazon, hii ni shughuli nzima ambayo serikali inahakikisha kwamba tunapata nafasi bomba ya kuwepo na tahadhari kubwa kuhusiana na kirusi cha corona.
Alright, thank you very much, Emmanuel. It is indeed a difficult time for Kenyans, and it is a difficult time for the world as a whole. Ibrahim Bwana says, from what I have gathered, this pandemic is detrimental mostly to the elderly, but you cannot be too careful. That is the truth, Ibrahim Bwana. Mostly, Terer, the conversation is about the immunity system, because doctors have said, and also the Ministry of Education and World Health Organization, that being a virus, it deals more harshly or more severely with those whose immunity system is lower, and that simply means the elderly.
But my prayer and biggest one is it goes down, because there are people who have big dreams, young people who are growing, going to school for the first time, and they're yearning to do the KCPE, later on do the KCSE and become someone in life. And for the sake of them, Lord, take this away. It's big for Kenya. And the biggest side of it is the government. Ijihakikishe kwamba inafanya juhudi zote, isitukulie ni kama kwa utepetevu mwingi. Nahitaji umakini mkubwa zaidi ili kuhakikisha kwamba wale watu ambao wanapata shida, kwanza hata wale watu ambao umesema kwamba miaka yao imekwenda sana, waangaliwe sana vile vile. Wale watu ambao wanaishi na wao wapewe nafasi vile vile ya kupata nguvu ya kuwalinda dhidi ya kuwepo kwa corona.
Alright, thank you very much. Ibrahim anasema kwamba Terere hiyo kikohozi, amekusikia. Na sijui nasema jamani, tupeni taarifa, mbona mwapiga story tu? Basi taarifa zinakuja sasa hivi. Don't you worry, we're going to be talking about what's happening in our country. Midamo says he's watching. Tito Koech says pang signal is weak. We're going to be getting you there in a few. Thank you very much for staying with us. We are going to be looking at what is happening in our country through the eye of the dailies, and you do have an opportunity to call in live. The calling number is right at the bottom of your screen. Do give us your opinion, and you can tell us exactly what you think about all this and your position, where you are watching us from, and your names. We have Onyonyi Simon, who is a spokesperson, private university in the country. Karibu sana, Onyonyi Simon. All right, from the very first page of the Standard, shut down, and this definitely came from a directive, a new directive that was declared by President Uhuru Kenyatta, that now in all learning institutions, well, that is a repetition, but education in learning institutions have been suspended, and we also have all inbound flights from other countries that have been barred for 30 days, and only Kenyan citizens or foreigners who have permits that are valid and residence permits are going to be allowed in the country. And we also have government offices and private companies that have been encouraged to let employees work from home if possible. And we have other limited activities like visitations in public hospitals and private hospitals, and jails as well. And these are drastic measures that have been employed by the government to help keep coronavirus infection at bay. We are going to be looking at how effective this will come in, or how effective this would be. And you also tell us what you think. Has the government acted promptly and in time? The Star: schools shut and travel limited as corona cases hit at 3. We now had a second and a third case that had been pronounced as positive infections, and the president has announced a travel ban from all affected countries to contain the spread, and that has been affected properly on page 6 of the Star. The Daily Nation, all schools shut as lockdown begins. President Uhuru has now announced drastic measures that the government is currently putting in place to contain coronavirus infection, a global pandemic which is here with us in the country. We're going to be taking you through some of the measures that you can employ at home so that you can also help yourself as an individual to keep the infection at bay. And before we go into a discussion with Onyonyi Simon, Emmanuel Terrer,
yes,
something from your end?
Yeah, kusema ukweli corazon kubwa zaidi ni kuhakikisha kwamba Wakenya tafuta nafasi ya kutazama runinga, kwa sababu utapata mawaidha makubwa kuhusiana na vipi utajisaidia wewe mwenyewe, kunawa mikono na vile vile kupewa vipengele ambavyo vitakusaidia ili upate nafasi ya kuhakikisha kwamba unakwepa pakubwa uwepo wa kirusi. Kumbuka kwamba serikali imefunga shule, na unaposafiri sasa hivi safiri na tahadhari kubwa sana, kwa sababu ndipo hivyo serikali tutaangamiza pakubwa kuwepo kwa kirusi hiki. Corazon, nafasi kwako sasa.
All right. Onyonyi Simon, karibu once again. Najua kwamba mtazamaji pia atakuwa anapata nafasi ya kuchanganua mambo haya, lakini we have drastic measures that are now being installed by the government. We had the president give the directive yesterday. Your position as you look at this, and how are you feeling about the fact that now we have to deal with this pandemic as a country as well?
As expected, if the World Health Organization had already given the ban early enough, and we had to wait for us to start reporting cases in the country so that we can take the measures, it was a real letdown to the government and the relevant offices. So my take is that right now we'll have to deal with the disease, as the virus as already is in Kenya, and measures have already been put in place, and I urge everybody to take the precautions so that they can stay safe. But the government should have acted promptly to ensure that the citizens are safe. Yeah.
All right, kumbuka kwamba una nafasi yetu inavyokabiliana na virusi vya coronavirus ama virusi vya corona. Niambie maoni yako alivyosema ama alivyodokeza Rais Uhuru Kenyatta. Niambie kupitia harafa 22047 @TV47KE kwenye Twitter, kwenye Facebook, ama unipigie simu moja kwa moja. Simon, this is already with us. The pandemic is with us. We have seen online Italians trying to urge Kenyans that we were in your position 2 weeks ago when this pandemic arrived in our country, and most of us thought it was just something that would pass, but then they have gone through second, third and severe stages, and now they're urging the country, other countries that are just receiving this news, that be careful. These drastic measures, and generally, how do you feel about the way the government is handling the pandemic, our government?
I feel if we could have situations whereby in almost every counties we have stations whereby citizens can go for testings, because it takes like a week to 2 weeks for you to actually know that you really have the virus.
Right.
So what we are supposed to do is that every sub-county hospitals should be well equipped to ensure that we have the required equipments to handle this case, and also to ensure that we can easily detect the cases, because
right.
it's
but
already...
Do you think we have enough? Right now we should be even having testing happening in offices and other places. But do you think we probably would be understaffed if we had to go into that direction?
Were it be that we were well equipped to handle this, then every sub-county hospital could already have these kits. But now that we're still only doing self-quarantine, it means that we are not still able to contain the virus. And also yesterday I saw something trending of an hotel in town whereby it had been cordoned that there was a coronavirus patient in that place. But there were no doctors at the scene, and later in the night there were still no doctors. So that's quite sure that we are still not ready to handle the virus.
Kwa makaunti tuliona kwamba they are talking about isolation spaces. They've already identified how to handle cases that would come in, and they have set aside beds, and they have masks and protective gears. Don't you think that probably this would be enough? That this is a step forward in the right direction?
You see, that one we are already trying to contain something that is there. But what we are supposed to do on the ground is ensure that we have the kits to easily identify the personnel that are infected with this. But when we don't know the personnel that are infected, it's easy to transmit it, because it will take me close to a week for me to realize that I have it. And by then, I shall have already interacted with so many people in the ground here.
All right. Many European countries did a shutdown quite late into the numbers of infections. Do you think that probably our country or our government has acted promptly by creating a shutdown in this moment? Because it's almost a shutdown, suspending learning, slowing down court activities. Do you think this is effective? Probably we've done it better than other countries.
I don't think if it's any better, because were it be better, we could have done this the moment China started reporting such cases. In Kenya, we have so many Chinese coming in and out. And as a closer tie to the China government, what we could have done is an immediate shutdown. Immediately the first cases were announced in that country. That's when we could have shut down the country. No flights in, no flights out.
The reasoning, I mean, what would have been the reason? We didn't have a reason to raise an alarm. If we shut down just because another country we're interacting with had the infection, would that have made sense?
It would have made sense in that it's a precautionary measure. If even the World Health Organization had already given the ban travels from and into other countries. But ours, we had to wait later until we reported cases is when we come down with the lockdown. The flights from China could have been banned immediately, not after we had started reporting the cases. Now it's already with us.
All right. Many people, dear viewer, have talked about being warned as a country that we stood at a higher risk than other countries. 60% was a figure given of contracting or of getting the disease reach our country. And many have wondered why we continued to receive visitors until just the other day from highly infected countries like Italy. But then the virus is already with us. How do you feel about how the government is handling? And do you know something that you probably would like to be put in place to strengthen our fight against coronavirus infection? Do stay with us. Don't go too far. It's hashtag TV47 Breakfast. I'm Corazon Sefan. My co-anchor Emmanuel Terrell is on the other side. But for now, let's take a short break, even as you bring in your views on this. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. This is TV47 Breakfast. We're talking about what's happening in the country through the eye of the papers. We're joined by another analyst, Milton. Karibu sana Milton. Wacha leo nikuite na jina moja. It's a free day. Karibu sana Milton Lusheri, who is an analyst and also a political commentator. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
All right. We are still with Simon Onyonyi, who is the spokesperson, Private University, Karibu sana, Private Universities. Milton, we're talking about the drastic measures that have been employed by the government to try to keep coronavirus infection at bay. And we are looking at how prompt these actions would be and trying to decipher if the government has acted properly and in time. What is your judgment on the reaction of the government?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Corazon. I think the government of Kenya has taken necessary steps at the right time in order to contain this pandemic. As you've seen, the World Health Organization has already classified this virus as a pandemic. And when it is classified as a pandemic, it means that it has the potential of wiping out the human race in a very short time. That is why the necessary steps are being taken so as to contain it. Only that the government of Kenya should have done this a long time ago, because we saw immediately this virus claimed one person in the US. The US installed this mechanism immediately. In fact, they made a quarantine area at the airport. And yes, the government has done well, but it ought to have done this a bit earlier.
All right.
Yeah.
Simon, we were speaking before that about the fact that this virus is already with us, and something else that maybe other Kenyans have felt is that areas like Rongai, that the first case was identified in, should be a quarantined area. Do you think that would be a proper suggestion?
It could be a proper suggestion, but only if the government could still take the mechanisms to curb it in that area. Because you cannot just tell them to stay in that locality, yet there's still people they'll mingle with. You see, even the government say that maybe some government officials should be staying at home and working from their houses. But people like the police, they have to go out to the areas and provide security. They'll still mingle with the residents. So if there's something that should be done, all the mechanisms that the government can acquire and take to that area to enable them be quarantined for some time. It's a bit hectic to quarantine them, but we can give it a try, because it's already a situation that we'll have to contain. So the government can just try and see if the individuals in that area can be quarantined and tested.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Milton, other activities like buying fresh produce, nyanya, vitungu, spinach, vitu kama hizi, these things still have to be moved from one area to another. And Kenyans are be worried. I don't know. What do you think about the normal activities like moving to get fresh produce from one area to another? Do you think there is a proper way that we would still have this normal activities going on, daily activities going on normally, and still be able to contain the virus?
Yeah, honestly speaking, it's gonna be a little bit hard, because at the end of the day, life must continue. And these are basic essential aspects of life that cannot be properly regulated. So in my own view is the government has tried to give guidelines on how that can be done. For example, they have mentioned about not using cash. Instead, you use alternative means of payments, e.g. M-Pesa and card payments. This is just to reduce the interaction between funds and people, so as to minimize hand-to-hand interaction, so as to minimize the impact of this. Only that the civic responsibility that Mutahi Kagwe mentioned is what is going to at least check on these items. For example, if you buy your own grocery, make sure that it is well washed and it is well properly sanitized. I know someone who actually buys nyanya and they actually sanitize the nyanya, because sanitary items are alcohol. You know, alcohol is not very, very toxic. So some people have gone to that extent just to make sure that whatever they are getting from the market is properly cleaned up.
All right.
Yeah.
Emmanuel Terera, I know that Kenyans have a lot to say on this. Emmanuel, kuna jambo mimi nafikiria hapa kwa akili yangu kwamba Wakenya tumezoea kwamba ukipata apple kule, unapata apple unaosha kidogo we wala tu, mambo kama yale. I mean, this is going to be a difficult time.
And according to at Suzy Katana _Katana, what happens after we stay home for 30 days? Will COVID-19 cease to exist in 30 days? My best part of it, kwa hii harafa yake, we are mostly hand-to-mouth country. Our jobs cannot be done from home. We should have come up with our own response instead of copy-pasting what the first world is doing. Na napata response vile at Suzy at Guru _Voke. Exactly my point. Watu wa 500 a day una expect watakuwa wamesave nini? In China naletewa chakula na drone, huku hata dawa za government hospital lazima uende kubuy. Some of the things ambazo zipo hapa wanazungumza sana. Someone anajibu at Edom Kibate _Kibate anasema there is nothing more we can do. anaendelea pia, it's not just Kenya, the saving culture is dying slowly worldwide. Even majority of Americans can't survive for 2 weeks without work.
All right.
Ngomo kidogo.
All right, continue talking to us and telling us what your feeling is, or what your position is on how the government of Kenya is handling or is trying to keep coronavirus at bay. Maoni yako ni yapi kuhusu vile serikali inakabiliana na haya? Ibrahim, bwana unasema kwamba in the US we have been advised not to go to the doctor unless it is critical because you might get the virus on your visit. Simon, one of the things that Terera has mentioned from one of the viewers is the concern that now we are being urged to stay and work from home. 70% or something close to that figure are basically jua kali earners, especially in a city like Nairobi. It's a very small percentage of Kenyans who are actually on 8 to 5 employment. If we are to implement that, working from home, what do you think is going to happen to the masses that depend on jua kali and daily income?
I think most people will suffer from that because if you check on even the economy, the revenue collections, they come from the small, medium and enterprise businesses.
Right.
So when you tell them to work from home, how am I going to sell my fruits from home? How am I going to chomelea my chumas from home? How am I going to hawk my bananas from home? It's very, very difficult. Kenya survives on the SMEs, and most people operate the SMEs business. So when you tell such people to stay and work from home, who will come from his home to go to another home to buy the ingredients they need? They'll have to go to the market to sell their products. So that one, there's even no quid pro quo in that at all.
Milton, what do you think is going to happen to these people? Because yesterday I interacted with a person who was selling vegetables to me, and his concern was, how am I going to go into Gikomba where there are so many people to collect this vegetable and bring? And if you tell me to avoid crowded places and to stay from home, mimi nitakula nini? You know, the second question I asked him, wewe usipoleta hii mboga mimi nitakula nini? It is a fact that a big percentage of our country and people, citizens, survive on SMEs. What do you think is going to happen to these people?
My honest opinion is that man must live at the end of the day,
right.
One way or another. And they say that when there is a calamity, that is when innovation is at its best. So we're going to see people devising ways of conducting their trade. Some would want to do home deliveries. Some would want to employ other means just to make sure that their businesses still continue. So we are going to see new ways of how business is going to be done. But then at the same time, there are people who will still just take the risk and go to the market and conduct their businesses. But even as the UN has warned, like the economy is going to slump by at least half. Yes. And that is just an indication that in the future there's going to be very tough economic times because of this scare. My prayer is that this virus be contained before we get to feel its full impact. Right. Some years back, when smallpox was such a threat, we also saw this kind of things that happened, and finally smallpox was contained.
Right.
So let's hope that scientists are doing their work. They're working around the clock just to make sure that we have a cure for this.
Okay. And Simon, something else that has been, and you've also mentioned it, and other people who are talking from other countries, before we look at what Terrer has on the other side, are talking about food delivery, because we have seen in China, for instance, that they were fully quarantined on a lockdown and they had food delivered to them, and each and every person was told and directed how to get out, how far and when. Do you think we should probably begin thinking about that, how to get supplies that are essential to people's doorstep? Do you think we need a budget for something like that as a country?
If we can set a budget for that, it's possible. But for a country that is operating on deficit, it might be a little bit difficult, because you tend to find that what is allocated that the government operates in its budget is way higher than what the government collects. But if we can get maybe an amount that can be used for these deliveries, it might help, because the government collects at the end of the day roughly a trillion, but we operate on a budget of almost 3 trillion, almost thrice of what we are supposed to be collecting. So if we can maybe get somewhere we can get the money to do these operations, well and good. because home delivery could be best to help some people. Yeah.
All right. Emmanuel Terere, najua kwamba Milton lazima kuna jibu hapa. But one of the things that this conversation is actually
it's really
something
big.
that it's passionate, you know, because would we as a country be able to afford if we had to go on a total lockdown and ask for food to be delivered?
I have the best question for you.
Right.
Unamwambiaje mtu wa bodaboda akae nyumbani afanye kazi from home?
Lakini kama utamletea chakula kwa mlango mwenzangu,
the biggest question is you can't tell them because they need to ride the motorbike for them to have money.
But what if there is food and essentials provided to them? Because that is the reason they go out, right?
Definitely.
Right.
Lakini taifa la Kenya lazima ujue kwamba we are suffering. The economy is not at its best. Kwanza hata kabla corona ikuje tulikuwa tunasuffer. So definitely hii ni sijui God tu atuondolee kwa sababu inaangamiza wa Kenya.
Yeah.
Jamaa motorbike anajua at the end of the day nitapata 200, 300, 400 and then I have to feed my home. So yeye anaamua kusurvive na hiyo 400 every day na aende home. So mtu ambaye amezoea hivyo it's really hard for kwao kwenda kukaa nyumbani akisubiri.
Right.
Kuna swali moja Onyonyi ameuliza kabla niende kule, amekuuliza tu vizuri kwamba it is really hard kutoka kwa nyumba yangu niende kwa nyumba ya Kedo nichukue food kwa sababu huwa anauza. It's still the same thing. Kama akona ndambukizwa tuna.
Lakini ameitoa wapi? Kwa sababu unajua lazima aende Gikomba ama Marikiti.
Definitely.
Alitoa chakula chenyewe wapi? What is happening on TikTok?
Okay, at Sophia 5077279, that's the name. Hi man. Staying home contains the virus, protecting the wider population. Those diagnosed can be identified and quarantined within the period. Someone also saying replying to Susie Gatana, Bora Brain, it will help you think of possible ways staying at home will help with. Also, we are staying home to prevent the spread. Prevention is better than cure. Your primary school teacher should have taught you that. After that 30 days, the virus will have stopped spreading. That's the question. Viruses stop spreading after 30 days. Is that what your primary teacher taught you? That's ni maswala mengi watu wanajiuliza. Mitigating the spread of the virus will enable our hospitals not to get overrun by sick, contagious patients. Think of the repercussions of having many coronavirus patients. The strain it will have on the healthcare system, it will be given a priority and every other disease second. Inamaanisha kwamba Wakenya sasa hivi wanaamua kuzingatia pakubwa kukaa nyumbani na vile vile kwenda kazini, vitu viwili ambavyo vinajitokeza kwa razoni ngumu sana.
Right. Milton, staying at home. Yeah. I know this is an issue. Many Kenyans might actually ignore this. This is important, right?
Yeah, I think when the first case was reported, the CS requested that the individuals be self-quarantined.
Yes.
The importance of that is to prevent contact with other people, which by extension will mean putting other people at risk. Looking at the Kenyan economy, we have some essentials that have to run, and they cannot run at home. Just as we've said, it may be a good proposition, but if you look at it critically, it may be practically impossible, especially for the SMEs and the people in informal sector who rely on the day-to-day living.
Would there be a better way? Would there be any other way that, even if it's not better, but close to better, how we can handle our daily lives, not extremely or absolutely go into self-quarantine and still have life going on? Is there any other way?
What the government has suggested seems to be the best solution under the circumstances. Only that what we are going to see is culture change and behavioral change amongst the people who have been infected, or even the people, the entire citizenry. And the CS has really said something very critical, and that needs to be taken into account. Civic responsibility. That is making sure that myself, personally, what steps have I taken to make sure that I do not either infect others or I don't get the infection. So basically, that civic responsibility is very, very critical. If staying home, if you can avoid going out and you can still work at home, that would be the best
How
option.
would we get food? Because I know that is the most important thing. How would we get food?
This is the time when the delivery business people need to come on board and try and help us.
How about the cost of buying that food? Because if we have people staying at home, they might not be able to afford that food and the delivery costs.
Yeah, as we've said, it's a really hard situation.
Right.
So
should our government begin thinking about such budgets?
Yeah, for them that can be able to order, let them order. But for them that cannot, they may just need to look at other ways of trying to contain the virus.
What would be the other way? You have to eat, and yet you're not going out to do business.
Yeah. You see, the virus is just like flu, and there are ways of preventing that, and simple steps have been given. For example, just wash your hands.
Right.
Just use a mask if you have them. Use gloves if you have them. Those are the very simple methods that you can use, and also keeping yourself hydrated, taking a lot of water. So if you feel like you have to go out in order to fend for yourself, then just make sure you do that. I've seen some people carrying their own hand sanitizers. After they greet you, immediately they remove a hand sanitizer and then they wash their hands. So those are the very small things that we can do. But the government also needs to come in and issue a supplementary budget out of contingent funds, because this is a global disaster and by extension a national disaster. So the government needs to come up with an emergency budget to see if there are areas that they can work around in order to contain the virus.
All right, and we're going to be taking you through the steps of washing your hands and all that. But Simon, another issue that is in the papers is a directive that was given by Governor Joho for Mombasa County that restaurants, bars and clubs will not be operating as normal. They should be closed by 11 p.m. And now the bar owners and nightclub owners are saying they were not consulted, and they do not understand why, and that they're saying that at least 600 families will be affected by this decision. There's not going to be salary, there will not be income for 30 days. What do you think about this directive and the response?
You see, right now, the whole country is in a quagmire situation.
Right.
And locking down the pubs, the hotels and everything, it means that directly and indirectly, many families are going to be affected, because you find most pubs, they pay you on commission, or maybe they pay you after you're done with the work. And if you don't work, you won't get the money. If you won't get the money, you won't eat. So just maybe thinking out loud, if, for example, whenever you go to the clubs, there are those smoke emitters that we usually see. If there's a way that the sanitizers could be made in a way that they can always come out to, whenever they're pressed, the smoke comes out in form of now the sanitizers, and maybe through that you can get to use them in a
I can
such
see
a
Terrell
manner.
laughing
Because at the end of the day, you see,
I mean, what is the need? Okay, well, I know that the clubbing is not such a need, but oh yes, you probably have a point.
it's not a need
Right.
per se,
Right.
but it's a need to the workers.
Yeah, right.
Who need to buy food at the end of the day, need to pay their rents at the end of the day. So maybe closing down even if you had to close the club at 11, who told you that between 7 to 11 people won't come in contact with the disease?
The virus is asleep early in the
Does
evening.
it mean that from 7 to 11 the virus is asleep? Then another thing you have to also know is that this virus, it's more of a flu, you see. And it's something that takes close to 7 days for you to actually feel the signs. And meaning between the 7 days, I shall have interacted with him, I shall have interacted with you. And by the time I'm realizing that I have it, I've already mingled with many people, including Terrer, somewhere there, without knowing. So this scenario is just more of a serious situation that needs even maybe God's intervention to help us.
Milton,
Yeah.
nightclubs and the workers, and the fact that now they've been ordered to close at 11, and the reaction is that they don't like it. Sheba Lounge, for instance, announced that its closure based on the directive, but they're not very happy because now workers are going to have to go without money for the 30 days.
Yeah, I think the government of Mombasa acted out of panic and out of fear, much as their actions were justified and following the directive ordered given. I think they acted out of panic, because if you give that kind of order that by 11 the clubs ought to have closed, what is the rationale What is the rationale for that? It's because this disease does not respect time. You know, if someone was contacted at 11 in the morning, he'll still be contacted at 11 at night.
Right.
So I don't think this was the best approach Joho could have used.
Mm-hmm. But on your club, mtu mmoja akikohoa, that's it. So what was the other way besides? Because the coastal region is known for tourism and clubbing,
exactly,
and entertainment,
and that is what will affect the economy of the place by such kind of orders. Maybe what they could have done, they could have engaged the stakeholders, even as the way they are complaining. Mm-hmm. They could have engaged them and look for solutions. For example, they could have asked for hand sanitizers to be placed at every pub, and to make sure that the government officials follow through to see that indeed those things have been installed. That is one of the ways that could have been handled.
But how about in the moment that somebody is already infected? Because we know this is a place that is visited by tourists a lot, and you don't know who got in at what point before the ban was installed. Mm-hmm. Even with hand sanitizers, when you have someone who is already infected, isn't that highly risky?
Yeah, it's highly risky.
Right.
Maybe the government could have gone ahead and make sure that each facility has a doctor or each facility has a health practitioner, just to vet the kind of people who are coming in.
Right. Okay.
Like at the airport, you have to be vetted before you get in. Therefore, the same can be applied to the clubs and the places of entertainment. If a health practitioner can be placed at the door, just as they put bouncers, so as to examine every person who comes in. At least that would be a workable solution, other than issuing a blanket order that actually hurts the economy of the place.
All right. Tere, unajua mimi Milton akizungumza nimeona madaktari wakiwa katika milango ya clubs wanafanya screening. Unajua screening like unajua mnaingia pale kunywa pombe, mnafanywa screening ndo muingie. You know, and
but I guess
this is not easy. Eh?
They transform the bouncers to be doctors because
no, you can't educate. Nini mbona niangusha? Uta educate aje bouncer kwa daktari?
No, I don't know, but instead why replace you
sasa tukwenda Dr. Kamau amekuwa bouncer pale kwa mlango.
Buda wacha ni kuscreen na kupiga hii. It's a serious matter, by the way.
Right.
We are suffering. And this one at Daktar 001 anasema as hashtag COVID-19 pandemic evolves in hashtag Africa, let's salute the thousands of responders doing surveillance, lab testing, contact tracing, clinical care and communication 24/7, our civil army keeping logistics flowing. I salute you. Ni watu wa Afrika wanazungumzia vile vile. I've seen a couple of reports now that because the various nations in hashtag Africa had to deal with Ebola, they are doing fine in handling hashtag COVID-19. I am in hashtag Senegal, where the test for hashtag COVID-19 takes 4 hours turnover. Hashtag Trump League, I guess I know where that was bad, that is real bad, is and where it is not hashtag Africa. Mm-hmm. So Corazon watu wanazungumzia kwamba huyu napenda vile amesalute wa Afrika kwamba wanasukumiza, and then also the way we dealt with Ebola, definitely we're going to deal with coronavirus.
All right, and we also had in President Uhuru's speech yesterday that we've handled other crises before, and that gives us hope that we'll handle this. Finally, even as we come to a closer end, courts. We now don't have open courts in session, and hearing of cases has been suspended. Well, how does this work? I mean, because Simon, we do know that on a daily basis we have arrests and we have hearings, and we already have a legal system that is slow and rusty.
Wow, that's a hefty one. But again, if you have to go to the law system of Kenya, we have a backlog of cases still rotting in the judicial service. Mm-hmm. But again, according to the law, it should not take more than 24 hours before you are arraigned in court. Mm-hmm. So I don't know which procedure they want to use to ensure that whenever somebody is arrested, their cases are heard and they're released or they're jailed. Right. Because you cannot hold somebody for 24 hours. If we say maybe we need to take them maybe somewhere until the issue is over so that we can arraign them in court, where are we going to take them? Who is going to cater for their lives whenever they are? So I don't know how the judiciary intends to handle that. Yeah.
All right, Milton, Nairobi is known to be one of the areas with quite a significant rate of crime.
Yeah.
And that simply means that on a daily basis, and we have also been warned by United Nations that the economy is going to slump by at least a half or probably more than half. Yeah. And we know what happens when economy slumps and people don't have an income. It might actually result into a higher level of crime. And then now we have hearings, the court cases, hearing of cases suspended. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
There's something in law called force majeure. Mm-hmm. Force majeure is when an action happens and it is beyond human control. Mm-hmm. They term it as an act of God. That means something that happens way mm-hmm. out of the ordinary. And this virus is such a case. Mm-hmm. It's a force majeure. You also recall that insurance companies, they have also said that any case of corona, they are not going to insure.
But the insurance regulatory agency assured Kenyans that in support, they are going to make sure that Kenyans are insured in such cases.
Yes, I think that is a conflicting statement, because right. most of the insurance companies are saying, because it's an assured risk, and insurance is about probability. Mm-hmm. But this one is not probability. This one is assurance. Therefore, they are trying to shy away mm-hmm. from incurring such costs. Mm-hmm. So this is an act of God. It's a force majeure. Mm-hmm. But now back to the legal system that you've mentioned. I think now the judiciary needs to employ technology mm-hmm. if it is indeed to still remain within the law. Mm-hmm. Because if you are arrested mm-hmm. and you are detained for more than 24 hours, mm-hmm. then that is illegal.
Right.
Therefore, the judiciary now needs to quickly mm-hmm. see how ICT can come in and do some of these cases from a teleconference, or just find a way of how to handle those cases.
All right.
Yeah, so that at least they remain the law, but at the same time, mm-hmm. they still manage the cases.
Okay, yeah. Terero, wajua wakati moja mtu anakuambia kwamba sababu mimi si mwizi ni kwa sababu naogopa kupelekwa jela. Now you have such a situation, unaambiwa kwamba hata watu ambao wamefanya kosa, it's not guaranteed kwamba wataingizwa kule jela.
Ni tabu kubwa, lakini pia nilikuwa najiuliza jana kuhusiana na mambo ya magereza. Because those people wanakuwa wengi sana.
Right.
If moja ingize corona ndani, mwisho is there any precaution ambayo imechukuliwa dhidi yao?
Yeah, we were actually told that there are no new arrests. Hakuna mtu ambaye anaingizwa pale ndani.
So kumaanisha kwamba imekabiliwa. But Kenyans will not stop making memes about this. Kuna moja anasema hapa, when you've been single all your life and the world is ending, and someone says also, nikikumbuka cuts za next week zitafanya Uhuru tano tena. It's Kenyans. They are making jokes all over everything, and it's beautiful. It's never that serious. Sidhani kama kuna mengi kupitia Twitter sasa hivi Corazon.
Okay.
Ni masuala mengi tu yapo katika mitandao, watu wanazungumza kwa njia moja au nyingine kupitia Twitter, vile vile TV47 KE, kupitia Facebook vile vile ni TV47 Kenya, Twitter ni @Stefan3, @Emmanuel21. Endelea kuzungumza nazi vile vile kupitia 2247.
Okay, ingestion of vitamins will help with the immune system to help fight the virus, says Ibrahim. Talk to us and tell us. You can also give us tips on how to keep the virus bay. We are coming towards the end of this, and something else that happened, Simon, is the panic buying. And immediately Kenyans heard that we had a case of coronavirus in the country. We had people from the middle class definitely flocking the malls and buying as much as they could, the tissue papers, Dettol, hand sanitizers, and all of a sudden a hand sanitizer that was 600 shillings, what 600 shillings was 1,500 shillings. And many have condemned this. Well, besides the hoarding, which is unnecessary, the panic buying, is it as a result of the self-preservation, selfish self-preservation instincts of Kenyans, maybe because of the oppressive system, where now the middle class doesn't think of any other thing except self-preservation? We didn't ask about insurance or anything like that. We went into buying. Do you think it's a reflection of what we are as a society?
But again, you have to understand that you only have one life to live, right? And coronavirus regenerates. At times you might even think that you're already healed, but then after some few days or maybe a month, you find tena, it's back. So it's something that regenerates. And I don't think that it was so mean of the Kenyans to rush and buy these things, because they're just taking the precautions that they think can help them stay alive. And even if for it or me, I would have rushed to buy something that will help me preserve my life. I don't want to die young. I'm still young and I won't want to die right now. So if I'm told of something that would help me save my life, I'd run for it.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's no need to blame the Kenyans who rushed and panicked, because this is a pandemic that they've never seen before.
Right.
And from Wuhan, they saw that guys were dying even in the streets. So you'd even panic at the end of the day.
Okay, before we go back to Serero, Milton, the panic buying, it would make sense if as a country we receive this news, and those who are, well, the middle class are mostly the elite, would put the government, into, on a pedestal where they have to answer questions like, are we insured as a country? Do we have enough supply of the resources we need to handle this? We should hold the government accountable. But clearly, everyone went into panic buying if they could and when they could. What does that reflect of us as a society?
You mentioned something quite important.
Right.
You mentioned about self-preservation and self-perpetuation, just to make sure that you are able to live through this pandemic. The assumption is it is short term. That is a key assumption. What if it lasts for 7 years, or what if it lasts for 10 years? Did the items you bought survive you through that time? So what I would just say is that much as Kenyans are justified to buy out of panic, it is not necessary at this level. What I expected to see was the Consumers Federation of Kenya coming out boldly and saying that, and assuring consumers that you do not need to engage in such kind of acts, because once you do that, of course, you are also spreading panic to other people. And on the flip side of it, you're also degrading, taking products from other people who could have bought. Someone wants to buy sanitizers, they cannot. For example, myself, I went to buy some and I was told they are over. It's not just expensive, it's not there. So it is this kind of buying that actually does that. But also there's the importance of civic education. We need to be told exactly how this thing works. Because if you just think that by buying hand sanitizers you have immuned yourself from this virus, it means that you have not gotten the point. Therefore, there is need for civic awareness, just to be told what are the other ways that this thing is spread, so that we avoid people having the notion that it is only when you have hand sanitizers, that's the only way you'll be safe. We need to demystify that.
Okay. Yeah. And as we finish, kabisa Terera, tunajua tumalizia kule. The middle class have been accused on many occasions of taking care of their interests and finding comfort in the little that they have, and that is the reason why we've not as a country been able to hold the government accountable on other ills, the corruption and things like that, because a majority that is within the middle level socioeconomically find comfort in what they can afford at the expense of what's going on in their country. Do you think this was a pure reflection of that? Of
course it comes from the top. Even if you check in the government of the day, they tend to think more of what is best for the government. That's why recently I saw even our government being termed as a deep state. That's why they allowed even the plane to come to Kenya. They try to maneuver in a way that they can actually just financially benefit them. So even the middle class, to some extent, they behave in a manner that will only benefit themselves. So you tend to find that ours, to some extent, it's more of a rotten society, and people feel like the Armageddon is already with us here. So it's high time also we, as the middle class and Kenyans, we seek retribution with ourselves before even the apocalypse comes upon us. So to the middle class reaction and everything, at the end of the day, it's more of justified according to the picture that even the government of the day is giving to them.
All right, and thank you very much, Onyonyi Simon, spokesperson, private universities. Thank you very much, Alton Lushiri, who is... I wanted to introduce your title today because I keep saying different things. All right.
Yeah, governance expert.
All right.
Governance and policy expert.
All right, governance and policies expert.
Yeah.
Emmanuel Terere.
Yes.
Wajua wakati mmoja tena unajiuliza yule mtu ambaye anakwenda kule kujinunulia vitu, he's just buying and she's just buying everything he or she can afford and doesn't care. Well, yule mtu ambaye hawezi kununua and yet he or she is in the same country with you and doesn't have tissue paper, doesn't have that sanitary. I mean, do people even care about their neighbors?
I'm so sorry nilipoteza hiyo tweet. But first nilikuwa nimeipata. There's a question that guy aliuliza, mbona unafikiria ukichukua kila kitu supermarket yule mtu ambaye akona corona atapatikana na corona hata kuambukizwa kwa sababu wewe unajiona bora sana. So muachie pia kwa sababu yuko katika taifa lako, kama umechukua moja and awachia vile vile ajipatie pia kwa sababu yeye pia akiwa katika taifa hilo inamaanisha kwamba akishikwa na corona atambukiza mwingine, akiambukizwa baadaye utashikwa tu. So itabidi tusaidiane. At J Ageyo, this craze about sanitizers will mess us up. Remember, only those with alcohol content of 60% and above are effective, and there is no way of truly knowing which sanitizer is which. Yet good old soap and running water does the job. Let's be wise. Lakini kuna taarifa ambayo inafika kwamba Corazon wale matabibu ama nurses katika hospitali ya Mbagathi wako kwa Goslo kwa sababu wanataka kufunzwa vizuri kuhusiana na corona na vile vile hofu ya kukutikana na corona na familia zao ziko wapi. Ndio maana unapata kwamba wako katika Goslo. Sasa hivi ni taarifa ambayo imeingia sasa hivi nasema kwamba madaktari ambao matabibu au nurses ambao wanahudumu katika hospitali ya Mbagathi wako katika Goslo kwa sababu wanataka mafunzo zaidi kuhusiana na masuala ya corona.
Well, very unfortunate, dear viewer, and we're going to be updating you on that because before the announcement that there was an infection in our country, the question we asked even on this platform was how prepared our health officers were, how prepared our doctors and nurses were, and there it is. Deno Kingori King says, I can't believe even media is afraid to defend its people, saying that government has put measures to deal with COVID-19. Instead of speaking the truth, our government was busy looking for COVID-19, and now that they have found it, it was all because of funds. Terer, is it true that we are afraid of saying the truth? I mean, clearly the government has put in measures that other countries, especially the European countries, took time to put in place when the infection arrived.
I don't believe so. Media is trying everything.
Right.
Hata nikuuliza huyu bingwa ambaye ameandika hivi, hii taarifa alipata wapi kama si media?
Right.
Inamaanisha kwamba media inahakikisha kwamba unapata taarifa ya kwanza kupitia gazeti, television na vile vile radio na vile vile social media. Bado ni media. Inamaanisha kwamba hiyo taarifa umepata kupitia media.
Okay.
Lawama ya serikali usiweke katika uandishi wa habari kwa sababu ya kitu kimoja. Serikali ilifeli labda pengine kudhibiti ndege iliyokuwa inaingia katika taifa la Kenya au vile vile kukaa kwanza hadi wakati kisa cha kwanza kinakutikana taifa la Kenya, ndipo sasa likalivalia njuga swala hili, jambo ambalo hadi wa sasa lawama tunaweka.
Lakini hata kule kukubali ndege ziingie, habari sisi ndo tulipeperusha kama
kwamba ilikwenda moja kwa moja.
We did our part. Well, as we come to the very end, I know Mary, we have some pictorial illustrations on how to make sure that you keep coronavirus the way you have been urged through the Ministry of Health and World Health Organization to keep washing your hands. And the concern is what to use. Is it hand sanitizers or soap? You can actually take a look at the picture. All right. And water or use an alcohol-based hand sanitizers. The experts have actually said that the virus has a greasy external coating that actually can be dissolved using soap. So a simple soap and water hand wash will do it for you. Avoid close contact with people who have flu-like symptoms, and that is how we get the 100 meters away. Cover your nose and mouth with tissue or cough and sneeze into your flexed elbow. Avoid handshakes handshakes at all, hugging and kissing with people who have flu-like symptoms. Stay at home and avoid traveling when you have flu-like symptoms. We know that Africans love the handshake and the hugging, but now you have been urged to just do a simple wave or elbow shake, which will protect you, because again, the experts indicate that the virus stays and remains in the hands for quite some time, and the moment you interact with it from your hand and get to touch another part of your body, then there it is. Keep safe. This is TV47 Breakfast. The hashtag is TV47 Breakfast. Ministry of Health talks about it as well. The moment that you see these symptoms, high body temperature, coughing and sneezing, when you have a sore throat, you feel a headache or difficulty in breathing, these symptoms will start within 14 days of infection. If you have these symptoms, visit the nearest health facility for medical attention or contact Ministry of Health emergency teams on hotlines. The hotlines are right there at the bottom of your screen: 0729 471414, 0732 353535. You can call in if you have seen any of those symptoms. Use the hotlines. And right here on TV47 Breakfast, we wish that we stay as safe as possible. I'd like to take a short break, but when we come back, we have a different discussion on this same set. We're joined by an expert in fresh produce, and the question is, how safe is the food we consume? And also, how safe are we in terms of supply, especially in this season where we have an attack of coronavirus in our country? This is TV47 Breakfast. My name is Corazon Sufan. Emmanuel Terere is exiting from the other end. Don't go too far.